Okay, this video right here is called Greatness in Ruin. The author's name is Ricardo Duchesne. He was a professor at a university in New Brunswick in Canada. And the funny thing, too, is his background. This book just came out in 2024. It's really about Western civilization, sort of the history of achievement in Western civilization. And it's like 650 pages of small print with no pictures, okay? It's a very technical book. He reminds me a little bit of Rodney Stark, a historian very interested in all the details. And he's a real smart guy, and he did very extensive reading. I do think, though, it's a little bit like, only an academic scholar nerd like myself will read this book. It's not like something for the masses. All these different theories about why is it that Western civilization and the Christians created almost everything in terms of scientific and creative artistic achievement in the history of the world, okay? They started with the achievements of the ancient Greeks, okay? But here's what also is funny. This guy's half Puerto Rican. He's born in Puerto Rico. His father's half black. Okay, and then a bunch of white communist leftist professors said that he was racist. The left has taken over the universities, and they don't allow anybody to not agree with all their craziness, okay? You know, Helena Troy is black, like the latest version of the Odyssey on the movie theater. It's insane, okay? Western civilization is committing suicide, you know? He refused to sign some DEI mandate at a Canadian university, and then a mob of 100 leftist professors started harassing him. What a joke. What's the goal of leftism? Jenna, you know what? Then side of the population, return to slavery, starvation. That's the moral high ground. Replacement of the traditional family by anal sex. I mean, what kind of a goal is that for civilization? Okay, so we talked about some of these things before, and he goes through all this stuff. Anybody who studied Western civilization and history knows the ancient Greeks did almost everything before the modern era. You know, they had tragedy, comedy, history, philosophy, pre-Socratic, post-Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian, advanced mathematics, Euclidean geometry, Hipparchus for trigonometry, Archimedes for early calculus and for engineering. Plato was big on math, so was Pythagoras, Pythagorean theorem. All that stuff contributed to it. But the Greeks were rather extraordinary at mathematics. Archimedes' early inventions of machines, which he used to fight off the Romans. Thales with early astronomy, then Ptolemy with later astronomy. He predicted an eclipse, Thales. Biology, zoology, Aristotle, early medicine, Aristotle, Hippocrates, rhetoric, Aristotle and logic, Aristotle, etc. Aristotle, a genus species classification. I mean, tons of stuff. The first libraries, the first proto-universities, the Academy of Plato, the Lyceum of Aristotle. It goes on and on. The ancient Romans really didn't do much. A little bit better roads, fancier buildings, aqueducts. Cicero was great, extended what was known about rhetoric beyond what Aristotle had done. Okay, fine. The university system of the world was invented in Europe. By 1500, there were 66 universities in Europe, and there were 0 outside of Europe. It was run by the Catholic Church. It was all in Latin. Professors could go back and forth between the places. The big university star, around 1200 was Abelard, the great Abelard. Abelard and Eloise, star-crossed lovers, okay? King Charlemagne and Alcuin around 800 AD had already expanded the educational system to move beyond just the monasteries, for example. The first university was in Bologna, Italy in about 1088. Oxford soon after that in 1096. The top 50 philosophers of all time, they're all from the West. Okay, European Christians just dominate all achievement in painting, classical music. They invented the musical notation system. They invented the musical instruments we consider the modern things like the piano, etc. The greatest composers were all Christians. More advanced math also came out of Europe through Gauss, Newton, Leibniz, and others, as well as the modern scientific method. And then American as well as European Christians in combination, things like the Morse code, the telegraph, the telephone, the radio, the TV, movies, Hollywood, phonograph player, Thomas Edison, the camera, the bicycle, the electrical light, DC current with Edison, AC current with Tesla. So a lot of these guys are from Europe and came to USA like Tesla. Okay, the Yugoslavian engineer, inventor, the automobile, the airplane, the semiconductor, the computer, etc. It just goes on and on, okay? It's like almost everything came from the West. It's not like half of it. It's like almost everything. It's just a fact. People don't like to hear it, but it's true. Almost everything came from the West. The best epics, Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, Divine Comedy, Jerusalem Liberata by Torquato Tasso, Paradise Lost. And he also made the point almost nothing was invented by women. Women were busy having babies. He did say something funny. He said Western Christian men were more Apollonian, intellectual, thinking about thinking. He said women are more Dionysian, wild, like wild animals, like nature, which is kind of a funny thing to say. They're about having babies, raising babies, life on Earth. He also said that Camille Paglia, he quoted Camille Paglia, the professor lady from universities, and Camille Paglia said, men are designed to be thinkers and protectors. Women do not need to think much to exist. Up until modern era with birth control after the 1960s, women just had babies, 10 or 15 of them. Their job was trying to keep those babies alive and healthy and, guiding them, okay? When I was a kid too, most women in the areas where I grew up, upper middle class suburbs, they were married and they stayed home and they raised their kids and there were big families. That's how it was. This new idea of women in the workforce with men, that's all new. It wasn't even like that when I started in medicine. Almost all the doctors were men. Now it's only the modern world where more women than men in the colleges. Nowadays it's like 65% of college students in the USA are female rather than men. Okay. Women are good at getting grades in school and memorizing stuff, and the system's very feminized. It favors them. But when you get into intense competitive effort, women usually don't want that. I know 3 different girls who were second in their medical school class. They just wanted to have a nice house in the suburbs. They didn't want to compete and achieve and fight it out with men. No way. Let's see, what else? He said virtually all of the major disciplinary fields of knowledge in like a university, he said they come from Christian civilization. Mechanized agriculture with horse-drawn iron plows, rotating crop fields, astronomy, archaeology, anthropology, anatomy, biology, botany, chemistry, calculus, economics, engineering of industrial machines, geometry, geology, geography, genetics, history, perspective, painting, philosophy, physics, electronics, ocean-going, shipbuilding, oceanography, sociology, theology, epidemiology, computer science. This is all from Western Christian civilization, okay? That's just a fact. It's known to anybody who studied history. Okay, and all this multiculturalism, trying to pretend it all came from everywhere, it's a bunch of nonsense. Okay, anybody can open a book and learn this. Okay, what you have now is a culture where the left is extremely anti-Christian, anti-white, because it's an embarrassment to them. They know their philosophy is nonsense, but they need to get rid of Christianity in order to destroy mankind and push them back into slavery, which is the goal of all this. Okay, and in order to get everybody into the cities that are only of the duration, a 1 and then a 5 minutes, to do that and to have the big AI, which means aggregation of information to give everybody a what type of score, social credit, like China or something, and control everybody. That's what the goal is of leftism. It's to remove all freedom and to have total control of the population like a bunch of farm animals and make the secular rulers like gods on earth. That's the goal of it all. There's nothing moral or ethic about it. It's able to trick all the stupids into thinking it has the moral high ground. It has no moral high ground. It's evil, okay? Its goal is, bump off as many babies as possible and then bump off the rest of the population as much as possible, except keep a few workers, keep a few SEX, what? That word comes next, SLA, and then what comes next, a VES. That's what it wants. It doesn't want to make things better for the population. That's all nonsense, just to trick idiots. Okay, let's see. What else did he say here? He said the Greeks, were the first culture and the only ancient culture that was thinking about thinking, the idea of metacognition, to become aware of one's own thinking with the goal then of improving it. And the Greeks were magnificent at that. It's very interesting to read books about early Greek philosophers, how they struggled to increase what they could do with thinking, their logic, okay? And he says the Greek motto of know thyself is a good way to say metacognition, to understand one's own thinking, to increase one's self-awareness. And that's a very Apollonian value, and it leads to introspection and deeper study of a topic, which leads to creative achievement and new inventions and discoveries. Okay? And also, I would tell you, if you read history, it's boring to read about secular history because it's always the same thing, almost always. The ruler of almost all societies since the beginning of recording time is a very aggressive, brutal dictator, okay? And they tell everybody in the population, wherever it might be, do as I say or I will kick your butt. Okay, so everybody has to say, okay, we'll do whatever you say. And then the ruler then says, okay, now let's get as powerful and strong as we can so we can go beat the crap out of the country next to us and steal all their stuff. If you read history, you will see that is what history is all about 99% of the time. It's rather boring, okay? I like cultural, aesthetic, creative, scientific, intellectual history. That's interesting, that's uplifting, that's inspiring. But just secular history, territorial, geopolitical history, is just constant, endless war and brutality. Get stronger than the neighboring country, kick the crap out of them, steal their stuff, okay? Build a ship, travel some distance to another country who we can conquer, beat the crap out of them, steal their stuff, okay? That's the history of humans on this planet. Okay, what else did he say? He said that European Christians were very creative because of Christianity. The non-Christian Europeans, they were just barbarians, very violent to others, you know. So it's not just because people are white. It was because they were Christian, okay? He said Christian Europeans tend to not care so much about their kinship ties. And he felt actually the Catholic Church weakened kinship ties because it gave them outside organizations beyond the extended family to have allegiance to. And he said that this made them less conformist, more individualistic, and led to increased creativity. But it had a downside to it because it led to less willingness to defend their city and their country, and that they're often jealous of each other. And paradoxically, they're more trusting of outsiders than our other ethnic groups. A lot of other ethnic groups. By the way, you always hear the word, oh, we need diversity in the USA, we need diversity in Europe. How come nobody says we need diversity in China? How come nobody says we need diversity in India or in Africa or in any other country other than Western Christian countries? And the reason is they want to destroy the Western Christian countries, okay? You know, Obama gave a speech about how we need more diversity in Poland and Hungary. Why the hell does Poland and Hungary need more diversity? Whites are only a very small percentage of the population. What are they, about 6 or 7% of all the people in the whole world? Why do their countries need to be destroyed? Okay? How come nobody's saying we need diversity, you know, in Brazil, or we need diversity in some other place? You know, give me a break. It's just an attempt to destroy these countries, their traditions and their ways of doing things. They should be allowed to exist. Leave them alone. Let's see, what else does he say? He says the history of the West books need to be written by generalists. He said historians tend to be too narrow in their study, and they just don't have the knowledge of the wide enough reading base to write a history of the West. I've written some histories of the West, and it's because I have a wide knowledge base. I don't know all the details about some little 200-year span the way a real university historian will, but I'll know the big picture way better than they will, be able to articulate it and, you know, find the relevant paintings or images of it to, you know, bring it to life, so to speak, for a wider reading public. You know, only a pretty serious nerd can do that. I just read it because I was on a treadmill. It took me like 2 treadmill sessions to read it. But it was kind of meticulous, a lot of detail. There was too much detail on some things, let's say. Okay, what else does he say? The author's conclusion. He says, the West is rapidly headed into extinction. It is being then you know what word comes next, sided. He says, it must restore appreciation of Christianity. It must restore the idea that the USA is a melting pot, that everybody should get along and work together. They have to stop scapegoating the whites and the Christians. Otherwise, the West will go extinct, and it's going to head back into slavery and a complete loss of freedom. So anyways, hopefully freedom will continue. Hopefully everybody will be nice to each other. Anyways, that's it for this book review. Hope you found it helpful.